Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. It's Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. It's now 8:31. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Selectman McKelvey to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gary. Before we proceed with item 2, we have a couple additions to the agenda. 8.2, the Guilford Ag Society for an application for a sign. And then 8.3, the Guilford Art League for the use of the green, I believe. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board, limited to 3 minutes on any agenda item. If you wish to address the board, please come to the table and state your name and address. Yes, Paul?
I don't know if this is on the agenda.
Over here,
but
please.
I think I have something very important.
Well, let's hear it, and I'll let you know.
Okay. Shut me off after 3. Paul May, 117 Wananut Trail. Over the weekend, I don't know if you've heard or seen, that there's been some devastation up at Sullivan Drive. And that's the main parking area and entrance to the East River Preserve, and also for the National New England Hiking Trail. Whoever did it, I have to say they're scum. And if you see it, you might agree with me. You know, we've had this problem for a couple of years now, and this mural was dedicated three and a half years ago, and it was by students of Guilford, Connecticut, and that's a slap in their face too, because they're most likely, most of them have graduated and gone on to their further education or went on to get their life organized. However, I called the police, and there was a call that came in, and I suggested it would be all right if I traveled every entrance, and which I did. There was a total of 3, 2 on Sullivan Drive that were damaged, and 1 on Bear House Hill. And, you know, it was the same thing. Maybe there should have been signage there. Something had to be done. Nothing was done. And if you remember, Joe, we had a great meeting about a year and a half ago about graffiti. And you said that you would have to go to the legal department because you don't think that there's anything in the town ordinances about graffiti. Well, it's town property, and it's damaging to the town. We have people that come in. We have the park is being, or the preserve is being used tremendously, and that's what we wanted in the beginning. But to come into where the so-called front door is of this preserve and see this, what do people think? The residents here, the people who are visiting Guilford, and then the people who volunteer, and there's many volunteers. I was not going to come here this morning, but I decided I have to, and you know, something definitely has to be done. The police took the photographs. I didn't bring any here, and what I'm suggesting is that I think the Board of Selectmen should either go down in a group or individually and go look at this devastation. And I'm willing to go down with you.
Can it be repaired or no? It's just,
Well, we were going to get ready. I was starting to get ready to get it repaired from the last time, which was a few months ago. And I felt that it could be repaired at that time. But this is the fourth or fifth time that this has happened. And each time it gets worse. I'm not going to start getting things done. I got some of the shade colors of the paint, but everything has to be put on a hold until something has to be done, period.
Well, I agree with you. Okay. And I've let you go on. We can have a discussion in my office later.
Okay,
Okay. I've let you speak, but this is not an agenda item.
okay, I understand that. That's why
So- Okay. If you'd like to come see me later, I'd be happy to
okay.
discuss
Maybe
this
this
with you.
afternoon?
That's fine.
Okay.
Just check with one of the ladies inside.
All right.
And I'd be happy
Okay.
to go down there with you,
What's that?
go down to the site
Yeah,
and visit with you, and we can have a discussion and see what can be
Okay.
done about it, okay?
okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank
If you
you.
let us know, maybe some of us can go down
Okay.
and make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul and I will set it up, okay? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did I do well with 3 minutes?
You did great. As always.
Thank you.
Who's next, please?
Good morning.
Morning.
I am Nona Bloomer, and I live at 988 Leeds Island Road in Guilford. How very ironic that only 2 months ago in the Guilford Courier of July 6th, the article headlined Signs of Discontent regarding the proliferation of street signs in North Guilford refers to First Selectman Joseph Mazza, saying that the state never presented a completed plan to the town and had moved forward without clearly communicating with the local traffic authority and the Guilford Police Department. Coincidentally, in that very same issue of the Courier, another article headlined No Plan in the Works for Shoreline Greenway Trail in Guilford informs us that Mr. Mazza, hoping to rescue some Shoreline Greenway Trail, SGT, grant money, is prepared to take up that issue in the fall, which is now only a couple of weeks away. Over 600 Guilford residents signed a petition requesting a map of the proposed Shoreline Greenway Trail in Guilford, and an overwhelming majority of speakers at the public hearing held on November 1st, 2016, spoke against the SGT segment proposed for Route 1 in Guilford, not only because it adversely affected landowners, businesses, and residents, but also because there was no plan. That hearing was followed by the meeting on January 17th, 2017, in which you, our Board of Selectmen, responded by voting down that proposed segment. A mere design tweak by our town engineer ignores the fact that it is largely the SGT piecemeal approach that was publicly rejected November 1 by a 2-to-1 margin. The principle remains the same. The Route 1 SGT proposition, regardless of any reconfiguration, is a segment of an unmapped and imaginary trail which the SGT loudly intends to go from Hammonasset Park to Lighthouse Point, traversing Guilford along the shoreline and Route 146, regardless of having already been rejected by significant landowners in the vicinity, such as Yale University, the Leet family, and the Guilford Land Conservation Trust. While the street sign fiasco can be, and has been remedied by simply removing street signs. There would be no such recovery from the disaster of losing landmark trees, desiccating wetlands, blasting well-water aquifers, destroying historical areas, losing properties to eminent domain, and violating land trust preserves. Please follow principles and do not approve any segment of an SGT project in Guilford for which there is no plan and there is no map. No amount of money is worth the enormous risk of potential and irreversible damage. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, maybe I can save everybody a lot of time. You can stay if you'd like. You're referring to the agenda item number, I think it's number 6.4, where we will set 2 public informational meetings. And that's all they are. There's no plan. There's no design. We're not resurrecting anything. The engineering department has requested to set a public information meeting just to get your input. We have no plan. We're not cutting down any trees.
Then why the discussion?
Please let me finish. I listened to you, now please listen to me. We want your input. We want to hear what you just said. But we want to do it at a public meeting. 8 months ago, we heard from you. And this board voted to scrap the design that the engineering department had put forth. We don't want to go through that again. We want to hear what you want us to do to accept the money. That's all. That's all we're doing is setting a date for the public informational meeting. I don't have a design that was presented to me, either do the other selectmen. Have you seen a plan? Have you?
No.
Have you? Carl's not here, I can't ask him. We want your input. You've asked in the past to have your voices heard, and that's all we're asking, to hear your voices. We're not resurrecting the original plan that we voted down. We're just setting a date for your opinions and your desires. That's it. That's all, Mrs. Moore. That's all we're doing. This board does not want to go through what we did almost a year ago. I have a couple of emails here that I received last night that I was going to read into the record, and I'll still put into the record. I see some of the authors of those emails are here. They can read them if they like, but I'll enter them into the record. But that's all it is, folks. It's just to set a date so we can have a public informational meeting. If you say you don't want it, that's fine. But that's the time to say that. All right, we're still in public forum, so anybody wants to speak can. But that's all we're doing. We don't have a design. The engineering department has requested for us to set a public informational meeting date and time. Period. Yes, sir.
I'm Louis Makel, 295 Clabbert Hill, and also 135 Leeds Island Road. I just want to say I'm shocked that this is being brought up again when it was so clearly rejected. How many here are against this Route 1 proposal? How many here are for it? This, I think, shows, number one, our interest. Number two, the fact that it's a waste of time. Number three, the fact that we think that the town engineer has a particular agenda, which we are all forced to accommodate at a great waste of our time and energy. And the fundamental principle is that the Greenway Trail is their attempt to do rails to trails in Guilford. It does not work. The town has wasted a lot of time and money pursuing this, and clearly is continuing to waste time and money, which we think it should not do.
I have a question. Are you against even sidewalks on that?
No, sidewalks are are what we should have, no
So
question.
what if the
Well,
money?
let's say that. Yeah.
So, I was gonna get to my point. So
Okay.
what if the part of the, what my understanding, and we're gonna have a discussion about it, that the informational meeting will be for is what we can do with the money in terms of being able to put sidewalks in. I mean, that's
Put
part of.
a sidewalk,
but
that's fine.
But we don't wanna do anything until, that's the point of doing it. My understanding is to do this, to have the meeting to talk about different options and what we can and cannot do with the money
Right,
in
but-
terms of, right.
We've
But-
already told you couldn't do sidewalks with that money.
Right.
That was made abundantly clear at that last meeting.
And furthermore, the sidewalk, in order to meet the requirements of DOT for this, the sidewalk or trail, whatever you want to call it, has to be 8 foot wide at a minimum. And it's silly. The sidewalk in front of the Guilford Food Center is 10 foot wide, and that's the busiest sidewalk in town. So we are paving a significant piece of the entry landscape coming from Madison along Route 1 for no reason. There's not going to be 8 feet wide of people coming down that sidewalk. And furthermore, the intent of the rails to trails, i.e. you take a path through a bucolic wood, means that they want to force it as far from the road as possible.
Well, I know what they want, but.
Which is expanding the concept, which is expanding the effect of paving, which we'd prefer not to do in Guilford.
We know, Cindy's right. We know what they want. We want to know what you want.
Well, we've told you what we're happy with. We're happy with the sidewalk and restriping of the roads for bikes. And the whole bike issue is a red herring because no bike is going to use, no matter what you put beside the road, because they have to stop then at every crossroad intersection. And nobody's going to do that, especially going down the hill. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just add one item to that, and I've said this before publicly. I do believe that some of the, and I've got an issue because it's state money, and the state doesn't have money,
Right.
but some of the state money can be repurposed for
Yes.
a legitimate
Federal, too.
study of what the town needs for pathways, roadways, sidewalks, et cetera. And you know, I would like the Shoreline, and I've said this to them, I would like the Shoreline Greenway Trail folks to support the repurposing of that for a general town-wide study, which obviously reduces their ability to do anything. But I think that would be a worthwhile use of money if we're going to spend state money.
But the sidewalk issue is pretty simple.
Right.
You decide the priorities and you put the sidewalk where you.
But how are we going to
highest
decide the
priority.
priorities?
Yeah.
Again, let's decide what the priorities are, because we don't have enough money to sidewalk the entire town.
I'm not going to
So-
get into a
Yeah.
discussion at the
Sorry.
selectmen's meeting.
Sorry.
That's what the public hearing's for.
Yeah.
That's what the public informational meeting is. It's not a hearing. Yep.
I'm Patricia Kleindienst from 295 Clabber Hill Road, and I first want to ask if you did get Harold and Judith Ramsey's emails. If not, I brought
Yes.
a copy. Did you? They asked me to read it into the record.
No, I didn't get that one.
Here's a copy for each of you. And also, did you get Jason Marche's
Yes.
email? Okay. So I want to ask a procedural question first. May I read this letter into the record and then make a comment? Okay. Judith and Harold Ramsey wrote an email last night, but it bounced back, so they asked me if I would please read it into the record. They live at 200 Boston Post Road, so they would be directly affected. They are on the original 0.7 of a mile route. Members of the Board of Selectmen, we are absolutely opposed to any plan proposed by the Shoreline Greenway Trail for the Guilford segment that will run past our property on the Boston Post Road. The 0.7 mile extending from the East River Bridge to Boston Street cannot accommodate a trail or an asphalt road or a sidewalk designed by James Portley or a pathway, which is probably a narrow version of Mr. Portley's road design. We suspect that the 8-foot wide pathway, probably with 2 feet of blending space on either side, is the modification already planned for Mr. Portley's road in areas where there is not enough clearance for the 10-foot road plus 2 feet on either side. We made our objections quite clear at the public hearing for the SGT Trail Plan, which was held on November 1st, 2016. We object just as strongly now to the Pathway Plan, which is the trail plan in transparent disguise. We urge the Board of Selectmen to abide by the vote of January 17th, 2017, that rejected the SGT Guilford segment plan as a bad, unworkable idea. By any other name, this plan is still a bad, unworkable idea. Please, in your meeting this morning, vote to reject this second SGT plan. Please respect the objections of the 38 residents who spoke very firmly against the first plan proposed for the east end of the Boston Post Road. Please do not dignify this second plan by scheduling another public hearing that will waste more town funds, selectmen's time, town employees' time, and residents' time. Yours sincerely, Judith A. Andrews and Harold H. Ramsey. So that's what they wanted to add.
Yeah, I'm looking at my emails, we did get it late,
Okay.
1:15 a.m.
I just want to add a few points. I think it's disingenuous to claim that you want to hear what we have to say. We've already said it. We have organized and spent hundreds of hours informing the Board of Selectmen and everyone who was open to it how the town people feel about this. Jim Portley wants an 8-foot wide sidewalk. That's not a sidewalk. That's his way of trying to get the money. I feel like our town is being seduced and betrayed by the dangling of money in front of you, instead of looking at what we really need as a town. We do not need 8-foot wide pathways to the schools or down Route 1. And we have all the same questions and objections to this fake sidewalk. What the town needs is a real traffic study. We do not want the SGT's name on any of this because we know how they operate. We know this is the thin edge of the wedge. If you give them a public hearing, if you make it okay for them, if they become part of the process again, it will never end. They'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I also think the town engineer's idea of trying to use this money for an 8-foot wide pathway is misguided. It's his idea of how we can keep this money. The money is blinding people, number one, to the ethics of spending money in a state that is in a severe economic crisis and will be for the foreseeable future, and also the environmental impact of an 8-foot wide pathway that will not be maintained because that's part of the way it works. So I think it's disingenuous of you to say, we just want a public hearing. I'm here to say, no public hearing, the issue's settled. We told you what we want. We need sidewalks and striping. If we can't get it, then do it another way. I don't think that changing the width is going to affect anything. I think putting this on the agenda for the first day after summer vacation and very few people knowing it is another disingenuous move. You know, we have all been through too much to want to go through this again. I don't think we need a public hearing. I hope you'll vote not to have one and let this die. We need a traffic study. But I guarantee you, if they put their name on that, you'll never get them out of town. They'll keep pushing for their ultimate plan. And when you say there is no plan, I'm going to have to say that I think I'm not comfortable with that claim. We have no plan. That's the whole problem here. You give them 2 public hearings. When is there going to be a plan? What kind of a plan is it going to be? Are we actually going to be able to say no to an 8-foot wide sidewalk? Then you lose the money. Are you already committed to having the money and not telling us? Because if you're already committed to having the money, you do agree with Portley's plan. You've got to take a firm stand and say, the Portley plan to use the money is about using the money. It's not about doing what's best for the town. A real 5-foot wide sidewalk will not destroy the environment. We won't lose heritage trees. And then we need proper striping. What I want to say here is every bicyclist in town should be told now that they've been dropped from the agenda. The whole claim of the SGT is bike ped safety. Guess what? They're willing to compromise so that it's only for pedestrians. How honest is that? How ethical is that? So what is the public meeting for? For us to go over this again and again and again and spend hundreds of hours again? I hope you won't put the town through this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ken?
Ken McKenzie, 6 Broad Street. I agree with what the people before me just said. One comment I'd like to make, read the agenda item itself. It says, consider and take possible action to set 2 public informational meetings for September 19th and 26th at 7:30 p.m. at the Community Center for the Greenway Trail from the East River to the junction of Route 1 and Boston Street, and the Nut Plains Pathway from Adams School to the Guilford Lake School. So, to me, that agenda item is a bit ambiguous for the following 2 reasons. One, it puts the Greenway Trail name on both the section of sidewalk between the river and Boston Street and the Nut Plains Pathway from Adams to Guilford Lakes. My understanding is they're 2 separate projects.
That's correct. There are 2 separate projects.
And additionally, the money that we have contemplated using for the Greenway Trail section is not fungible with a pathway from Adams School to Guilford Lakes.
That's correct. 2 different funding.
Additionally, this agenda item refers to 2 separate meetings. Is one meeting for the SGT and a second meeting for the Nut Plains Pathway?
Correct.
Okay, so the September 19th meeting is for the SGT then?
Mm-hmm.
And the September 26th meeting is not for the SGT?
Correct.
Okay, so that's ambiguous, okay?
But you understood it.
Huh? No, I
understood.
didn't understand it. I'm clarifying it now. I don't think anybody understood. I think most people probably thought there were 2 meetings for
Well,
the
we would
SGT.
clarify that in the motion, so that would be taken care of.
The monies that are available, I agree with what these people have said. I think the monies that are out there, it's incumbent on you, the Board of Selectmen, and Jim Portley to identify what money is out there, what it may and may not be used for. I think it's wrong for you to put the onus on the public and hold a public hearing for them. This is an SGT interest. I think the onus should be placed on the SGT to come to you with a proposal. They can sit with Jim Portley and use their time, not the public's time, and come up with a proposal on what they will do and what they won't do. The public has indicated that they're open to sidewalks. They've indicated that they're not open to a wider strip in the state-owned right-of-way. We talk about the state-owned right-of-way. The state-owned right-of-way is for emergency vehicle access and things such as that, in my opinion. It's not for a special interest group to take claim of and ram something through people's front yards. That's not what the state-owned access is for. So this is a special interest group. I like the concept of a greenway trail, don't get me wrong, but you can't take people's properties that don't want it taken and use it for that purpose. So to ask all these people to spend their time telling you what they want when they've clearly already done that is wrong. It's up to the SGT to come up with a plan, which they haven't done, present it to you in Portly, and then present it to the people and let the people talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hi.
Stephanie Scungio, 71 Horseshoe Road. And so I'll save all of my comments on the SGT for the public meetings, and that's fine. So the only thing that I want to say today is I keep hearing a lot about the initial cash infusion. And there's, the money's available, and that's great. But I don't hear anyone talking about the follow-on costs, the recurring costs that are going to be the responsibility of the town. How are we going to cover those things? So I hear in the news, the budget crisis for the state of Connecticut, and I personally am fully anticipating some increase in my taxes, as probably most people in Connecticut will, because what else are we going to do? Somehow or another, we're going to have to solve the Connecticut problem. I don't think that also potentially having an increase in Guilford town taxes to accommodate recurring costs that this will bring about are going to be palatable, given what we're already experiencing. The timing, if nothing else, the timing could not possibly be worse. And so I'll save all of my other comments for the public meetings.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close the
Can
public.
I just make one response
Sure, and then we'll close.
to Mr. McKenzie? I agree with much of what you said. In fairness, Mr. Portley's memo, the reason it's on the agenda the way it is Mr. Portley wrote a memo and it had 2 sections, and so it got included on the memo, on the agenda as well. The Nut Plains meeting was a direct request by me. It's supported by the other selectmen. When he came for the grant, I said, I don't want to move forward one bit on any physical plan for that Adams to Lakes plan without a public meeting, so we know what the people think. So that's where that came about, and I don't think it's. I don't think you should.
So it should have been 2 separate agendas.
It could have been 2 separate agenda items. It was if you look at the memo that he wrote, it's actually separated in the memo. So it's inadvertent, I guess, that some people read it as connected.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Is that fair?
That's fair. Okay. Item 3, approval of the minutes, regular meeting of August 21st, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any additions or corrections? Done? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Aye. I think you have to abstain on that one.
Oh, abstain.
Okay. 3 affirmative, 1 abstention. You? Okay. Item 4, Fire Chief Charles Hershap. There he is. Morning, Chief.
Morning.
4.2, consider and take possible action on the purchase of Scott air cylinders from Shipments Fire Equipment sole source vendor.
As the board is aware, this is phase 2 of a total of 4 phases of replacing our air bottles that are used for breathing air during fires and other emergencies. Our cylinder is only good for 15 years and required to be replaced and thrown away after 15 years. So this is phase 2 of that. And there's only one vendor that can sell the air pack cylinders, which is Shipment Fire Equipment. The fire industry has a lot of sole source vendors, and this is one of them. So I'm recommending that the Board of Selectmen purchase the cylinders from Shipment's Fire Equipment in the amount of $14,000. $13,000.
You had 1,000 at the end.
Oh, $13,000 even.
I would move that we approve the $13,000 request to purchase from Shipments Fire Equipment for air bottles.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Chief, we have 4.3, discuss and take possible action on a purchase of a thermal imaging cameras from Firematic Supply Company.
Right, we're replacing 4 thermal imaging cameras that in the age of about 15 years old. They're outdated, aged out of technology, no longer reliable. And these are used for obviously searching for fire. Gives it some visibility issues going through smoke, but much needed piece of equipment. And the low quote that I received was from Firematic Supply in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. The cameras themselves are $7,499 for a total of $29,996. I believe I gave you 2 other quotes, one from Shipments Fire Equipment.
You didn't get them. I
Okay.
We didn't get them.
Yeah, they're part of the requisition package.
Okay. They're on the 75 anyway, so we're okay.
Well, except it's 4 of them.
I move the request.
Motion made. Is there a second? Second. Okay. Discussion? Gary?
Only the question of, you said you had 3 other quotes. At over 25, doesn't it have to go to bid? Or is it
He's here.
because there's each is individually?
It would have to go out to bid if it was over 20. But he's here and before you, I think, to seek a waiving.
So you're also requesting a waiver?
Right.
Okay. Okay, and we didn't get them, but you do have 2 other quotes at a higher price.
Right.
I'll take your word for it. But just ship a copy over.
No, they should have them purchasing.
For the record, ship a copy over so that Tracy could circulate it.
One should be from Shipman's Fire Equipment, the other one from Granger.
Yeah, it's not in my.
I'll make
Not
sure.
mine
I'll
either.
make sure you get them.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Item 5, Facilities Engineer Steve Nightoff received report from Facilities Engineer on the timetable for the installation of the Town Hall carpeting, which I thought I saw him out there. Oh, there he is. Morning, Steve.
Morning.
Get this in before I leave?
Yes. Yes. Specs will be ready end of this week, beginning of next. Then we can advertise, go out to bid probably first week in October. 1 to 2 weeks to get contracts written, and then supposedly it only takes 2 to 4 weeks to get the material in, which should put us into end of October, beginning of November.
Okay.
It'll take the contractor about 4 weeks to do the entire building.
Now, the installation is going to be in the evening, I hope.
Right, Saturdays or nights.
Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Don't we have a project to redo sprinklers?
We do have sprinklers, which I definitely want to get done before the carpeting
Because
goes
we want
in.
to do that before the carpeting, right? 'Cause
Correct.
You could
Yes.
presumably
You do
drip
not want to
and
install.
spill and
In case there are leaks.
do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Test.
And test, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure that that's done
Done
before we
prior
do
to.
carpeting.
That is the plan.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, good, Steve, thank you. Item 6, Town Engineer Jim Portley. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I heard my name so much, I'm happy to be here.
I'm sure you are. 6.1, discuss paving requirements to complete road paving in the Northview State subdivision to satisfy town standards. To recommend contracting with Tilcon on the state VIP bid 16PSX 0209.
Well, it's been a long time. We've tried to get this money. Developers, through one thing or another, have gone bankrupt, and we are now in the process of completing the improvements to the subdivision. Back in August, the Board of Selectmen voted to call the bond. Doing that through, we had 3 banks we had to go through to get the money, but we did finally get through, and we received a check last week for the funds. The amount of the bond was $371,000. So this will be the first portion of that money we will spend. We have other things to do besides the paving of the roads, but I think for the people residing up in there, that it's important that we finish these roads before winter, especially Crooked Hill Road, which is really taking a beating. That was the original road that served that section of town, so that will be taken care of as part of this process. I would recommend the Board of Selectmen award the contract to Tilcon, Connecticut, for the $159,615.89, and Town Council advises me also to note that we will have to have them put up a bond for that, so there'll be additional funds, but to enter the contract, at least with Tilcon, to get the paving done and whatever it costs that we incur as part of that paving.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, I couldn't.
Gary?
Performance bond.
Okay, I mean, and that's required by law.
Correct.
I mean, we've done a lot of work with Tilcon, and we haven't had
Yeah.
problems, and it's just an added cost, and, okay, all right.
And I want to say it was excellent work by Town Council and Mr. Portley on
Thank you.
the collection of that bond. It was a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And nobody wants to give up $371,000.
No, and we had to go through, like you said, 3 different banks because of mergers and everything else, so we did get our money. Good. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. 6.2, discuss abandonment of right-of-way for future road construction as shown on map of the final plan of subdivision to be known as Spinning Mill, prepared by R.W. Waldo, dated October 17, 1969. Jim?
If I may say something
Yep.
before he makes his
Sure.
presentation. Technically, what we're doing is asking for a discontinuance of the road, which is a statutory process we
Yep.
have to go through. So the word abandonment is probably misplaced, so that's what you're, and today, all you really can do is discuss it, and then the next, or whenever you want, the next Board of Selectmen meeting on the agenda, you could say, you know, to set a town meeting, because you're gonna need, okay, just so we know where we're going with this.
Jim?
This was a 50-foot right-of-way was set aside in that Spinning Mill subdivision for future extension of a road if either the developer or the town decided they needed it, because there was a large tract of land south of this subdivision that was undeveloped at the time. Ensuing years, the land was developed in another fashion, and that was 1989. So the 50-foot strip has no value to the town. It won't ever be used. So following up on the request by the Jared DeSheffy, I would recommend the Board of Selectmen discontinue the ownership of the road. I don't know what else we'd call it, the right-of-way, and split it into two 25-foot strips and give each property owner half. Now, that takes the public.
So next agenda,
We'll set a town meeting date. Trace, would you put that on the agenda for next meeting?
So do the property owners know that this is being proposed?
One of the property owners requested it.
No, but the
Yes.
other? Okay.
And actually, Cynthia, they, according to statute, which is 13A-49, there's a requirement for written notice,
Yeah. No, I
certified
figured there was,
letters.
yeah.
He has to put a sign up in the area where the road will be
Okay.
discontinued, so there's all sorts of notice built in.
Cindy, this happens to be my neighborhood, and
Oh,
these people, they know it. There's actually an abutter behind that I talked to. His comment is, I have 3.5 acres, I don't need another little portion. But, you know, it dead ends into his backyard. And it's a liability to the town.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
listen, I think it's.
Tree falls down, it's our responsibility. Once it's transferred, it's their responsibility,
that's-
so,
Yeah.
and it has a minor
So what do
amount.
we have to do today then?
Nothing.
It'll just be on the next.
Just information.
So we have to recommend it for, no, we can't even recommend it for a town meeting. It
No,
has to
that'll
be
be
on
the
the
next
agenda. Okay, okay,
Jim just wanted to bring it to our attention.
okay.
Jim, next item 6.3, discuss and approve improvements to Cherry Hill Street from North River Street to the entrance driveway of Mill View subdivision.
Okay, planning and zoning approved a subdivision back in 2017. It's a 3-lot subdivision right at the corner of Cherry Street and North River Street. Access to the 3 lots will be a private driveway off Cherry Street. So consistent with previous policies, we would ask the developer to improve a section of road that led to the driveway. It's about 300 feet from the intersection. First discussions I had with the applicant's engineer was that they improve it to town standards, a 22-foot wide roadway. That drew the ire of a lot of people as it was proposed. So we had a public information meeting out at the site. We walked the site and had basically what I suggested to the Planning and Zoning Commission was that they approved the subdivision with the stipulation that with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, the improvements to Cherry Street be limited to widening the pavement out to 16 feet. Right now, the pavement varies in width from 16 to 17. It's in and out. If you know Cherry Street, it's all over the place, and it's a very bad section of roadway, very little used street. So as part of, I feel the developer's obligation, I think he should at least restructure that street, make it 16 feet wide, make it consistent with the rest of Cherry Street in terms of width, but restructure it so that the new homeowners will have a decent roadway to travel to get to their houses. So he agreed to that. So it was approved with that stipulation. The Board of Selectmen have the right under the town road ordinance to vary any of the standards. So I would recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they waive the minimum width of the ordinance from 22 feet to allow construction of a 16-foot wide roadway for Cherry Street. In all other aspects, in terms of the structure, the gravel, the base, everything else would be to town standards. So it would be structurally a good road. It's just that it would be narrower than what we have now.
Drainage is under control in
The
that.
drainage, one of the things, because it is a fairly steep grade, I think there's 7.5% grade on the road.
Drainage pretty-
Yeah, part of the reconstruction would be curb the road so water cannot get under, which is part of the problem now. Water gets underneath the pavement and heaves it. They would put a catch basin at the corner of Cherry and North Fair, North River, and they would curb the road from the entry driveway down to the intersection. So it's an attempt to be able to handle drainage.
Safety is not a problem.
No, the sight line can be, you can provide 300 feet of sight line in both directions from this intersection. So, okay, it's good.
Need a motion to,
I would move that we approve
The
the
16 foot.
recommendation of the town engineer to allow a 16-foot width on Cherry Street.
Second.
motion's made, seconded. Is there any discussion?
I would only say that,
Sure.
we had a bunch of people come in when this was first
Yeah.
proposed. I think that the town engineer and the natural resources coordinator had a meeting with the folks over there, and I think it was a pretty reasonable solution. And quite honestly, if you made this a 22-foot road, it'd become a raceway. So it's actually safer at 16 feet than it would be at 22. That is my opinion, because if you widened it, you'd have a lot of folks just zipping down that road. So I think it's a good solution.
I think it is also, so. If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye, carries. All right, Mr. Portland, we were out in the hallway, and we took all the abuse out here. 6.4, consider and take possible action. We'll set this as two motions. To set a public informational meeting for September 9th.
19th.
19th, excuse me. Thank you. At 7:30 PM at the Community Center for the Greenway Trails from East River to the junction of Route 1 and Boston Street.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Back in November, we had a public hearing. Went on to, according to Tracy, went on to the wee hours of the morning with the idea that and a lot of comment was given back and forth. The Board of Selectmen in subsequent meetings decided not to go forward with that design that was submitted and was developed in concert with the Shoreline Greenway Trail folks. My understanding was that we go back and look at that design, look at the comments of the people that showed up at the public hearing, and try to come up with a compromise solution before we walked away from the funding. The funding has been in place for a number of years now, and I think this is the last shot for that funding. I pointed out back at this meeting back after this November date that it's been part of the 2002 transportation plan for the town. That was part of the town. It was adopted by the Board of Selectmen, Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Comprehensive Plan of Development. Is that we have a sidewalk along Route 1 that goes to the Madison line. It was part of our policy to extend sidewalks and extend pedestrian ways outside the center of town. Now, I know that this money calls for Greenway. I consulted with the folks at DOT. If we were to build a path that's 8 foot wide of whatever surface we want, we would satisfy the requirements for a greenway. It would be wide enough so you could have both pedestrians and bicycles on this path. It's not going to be a bicycle path for high-speed bicycles. But if you wanted to take your grandchild or your children down from the East River down into the center of town, you could ride a bike on this path. You could use it for all kinds of things. And a lot of the comments I heard that night were that people wanted to have a pedestrian way from the subdivision that's right there on the south side of of Route 1, Sunrise, that was developed, and a lot of people came up to me and said they would love to have be a way to walk downtown without walking on the pavement. So this was a compromise in my mind. It would satisfy some of the wants and needs of the Shoreline Greenway people, but also some of the people who lived in town. What I've done is basically come up with a realignment to place this 8-foot path 2 foot from the edge of pavement, as in most places. I have to meet with a few folks to maybe vary that, and based on their desires, the property owners, I mean. But the idea to still satisfy both the town's long-term plan and the request of the Shoreline Greenway people. So my idea is to let this be aired so everybody, I heard some of the comments this morning, I certainly heard people who oppose the plan, and that's fine. That's what the democratic process is all about. Everybody gets a chance to say what they like or don't like. So I would ask that the Board of Selectmen set this meeting. I'm not looking forward to getting in the middle of a fight either, but that's what we all signed up for. You know, it's a debate, and if the merits are there, then you go forward. If not, you don't go forward. But it is the last shot we have for this money. I'm getting pressure from the VHB, which is handling the project for the DOT. They're saying at some point you have to either bite the bullet and go forward or not, but just give up the money.
On the issue of the fact, the condition of the state and spending money and that type of thing, is my understanding that this money would simply go to another town if we were to pass on it?
The money, the original set aside was for East Haven, Branford, and Guilford. If Guilford decides not to participate with this project, then the money would be available to either East Haven or Branford.
So the money's earmarked, set aside, whatever words you want to use.
Right.
It's not, that we would save tax dollars either state or local.
Oh, no. I would imagine that other
It'd simply
communities will
be
look at it.
utilized by the citizens in another community at that point.
And if they didn't have time to meet all the requirements for that, then it's possible it could
It'd
go
go
back.
back.
But I will tell you, my experience is that if it went back into the Federal Highway Administration funds, it would be used someplace.
I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Is there a sunset date on the earmark that you know of?
The DOT has told us they're getting pressure from they didn't give us a specific date, but they said it's been 10 years since the earmark. They want it to be spent.
Other people are looking for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the other. I mean, you just don't hold on to money and ad infinitum. You have to kind of go forward or not go forward. That's all.
Jim, this money would be enough to complete the entire project?
Now, this money, there's also, in addition to the earmark, there are funds that the Shoreline Greenway people acquired through, again, a grant from DEEP that would that money would be needed to supplement these funds to do the whole project. There's actually 2 grants.
But wasn't there some confusion about whether or not that money could be used in the fashion that you're describing? There seems to be an inconsistency there. I've spoken directly to the Shoreline Greenway Trail that money cannot necessarily be used to what you're describing.
Well,
which is the part of the problem of where the project.
No, the last conversation I had with Judy Miller, we had a meeting after this November. And they said they were amenable to going along with anything we came up with to again, construct that section of path. Yes, we would need to have their concurrence in going forward with this. So that they would say the money that they have sought and been allocated would have to be added to these funds to complete the project. But as of that time, I would hold her, and she was the president of the Shoreline Greenway Trail. I would hold her to her word and say, you agreed that if we build something, and I had told her what I had thought was an alternate plan, which to build, because part of the feedback, again, from that public hearing was people didn't like the idea of a chip seal path. They were concerned about the stone and this and that. This is this is very much just like any other sidewalk, just a little wider that you see downtown. So, again, I thought that would be a reasonable compromise. It allows people to get out and walk around. It allows people to get on bike on it. It meets the minimum standard requirement of 8 feet. And there are other standards, but we can work them into the design. But, so that's the basis of the.
Jim,
going
define
forward.
sidewalk for me.
A sidewalk based on our local ordinance is a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk. It's not, we have a typical cross-section that is part of our road ordinance that shows what it is to build that sidewalk. It is a detail.
But the
So-
5 foot is a minimum standard. If we exceed that, it doesn't preclude it.
Oh, no, no.
And Doug, there's a whole state level of DOT requirements for town municipal sidewalks, certain curb cuts, all those things must be followed. And then, just to be clear, like a sidewalk, so then you have what exists in terms of maintenance obligations on town sidewalks.
Right, but I mean, we have those, and those are in our ordinance, that they're stipulated. And our cross-sections, our road ordinance define what that is. And it does require that if you have a sidewalk in front of your house, that you, if you're a property owner, that you clear it of snow and so forth. By going to an 8-foot and defining it as something other than that, it may have the appearance of a sidewalk, but it would be a path we wouldn't be obligated. We wouldn't obligate the homeowners to clear the snow. But people want to, they could. And, I've had discussion with folks that, if we were to build these paths and want them to be used by the public, there may be a time when we all decide that the town will buy a piece of equipment and clear these sidewalks. That's another issue that has to be worked out. To think they're going to resolve all the issues at any one time, I think it'd be great, but I don't think it's practical. This was never intended to be something that would be made.
It sounds like it's really not a lot different than what's going on over by Cox now, where all of those sidewalks are being extended and improved and that type of thing. Only they don't have to be the 8-foot wide because of this other
Right. That
requirement.
sidewalk exists along, that was a 3.5, 4 foot, very badly conditioned sidewalk.
Yeah, and the new ones and everything.
Which
I
is
mean, that's going to be
wonderful.
great for people to walk.
Yeah, I know that.
I mean, that's going to take them up through Route 1 and everything.
I think it's different because of the people involved, but the ongoing maintenance is borne by the town, correct?
This would be, yes,
Yeah.
that's one of the requirements of this, the ongoing maintenance. So structural, which is what we do now anyway, in all honesty. Ever since, and Pam pointed out to us that for years it was a requirement under state ordinance that property owner, if you had a broken sidewalk, the tree roots or whatever eaved your sidewalk, or you had some sidewalk in front of your house was needed repairs, that the town would expect you to fix it. That no longer is allowed under state law. It's town absorbs that, and that's why we're going around and fixing these sidewalks on a regular basis. We have a program where we walk the sidewalks at least once a year. If we have these slight heaves where one section of a sidewalk is raised from another, we grind it down. If we find sections that are really deteriorate and need repair, we replace it. And that's part of what our sidewalk program is now. Total town cost.
Jim, let's go back to the width of the sidewalk again.
Yeah.
You're talking about an 8-foot concrete width?
Yes.
Trail.
Again, that's defined as.
By definition.
Yeah. If it was me, and so that meets the trail standards that govern the.
So it can't be less than 8 feet.
Cannot be.
But again, I have to keep repeating this, it would be concrete.
It would be concrete.
Jim, I'm told that you haven't done any design work on this. It's conceptual at this point.
It's conceptual.
Strictly conceptual.
Yeah.
In your opinion, and vast experience, what would the cost of this be relative to what you had designed before?
Well, he hasn't designed anything.
Well, I understand that.
I think it's approximately the same. I mean, I would, in the same, I couldn't be specific in terms, but in terms of order of magnitude, it's about the same number.
Okay.
And when
So-
you and I had, I'm sorry, yeah.
I was just going to say, so in fact, there would not be excess money to maybe continue a sidewalk or something down to connect to Alderbrook, which is where the sidewalk ends.
No,
I mean,
we wouldn't have to do that.
One of the concerns is, it becomes a segment without a connection.
No, as a matter of fact, remember, we did make an application. There's another program, Connecticut Connectivity Program. We made application for funding, and it looks pretty favorable that we would get the money to make the connection from Alderbrook up to the point. So that only has to be a 5-foot wide sidewalk. That would be a sidewalk. It doesn't have this was a program that we applied for, funding for. And it would be just extension of the sidewalk along Boston Street to the intersection with Soundview and up Boston Street to connect with what we have here. So again, achieve what we looked to in 2002, to have that kind of pedestrian access. We have on Boston Street what is designated as a bike path. We have signs all the way from Soundview. I think they're all actually from Route 1 that show it as a bikeway. So that component is satisfied. It probably would have to be tweaked to make it. I think it should be tweaked to make it wider, to make it safer for bicyclists. But the component for pedestrians would be satisfied with funding under this connectivity program.
Jim, do we subcontract this out, or is it handled
yes.
in-house?
It would have to go out as a bid. And the reason, going back to what I talked about, you asked about the price. This kind of construction is much more common, basically sidewalk construction. You can get a whole list of sidewalk contractors who can compete for this kind of work, as opposed to what we were talking about before, which is a paved and then chip seal surface, and there was a lot of tweaking of that so that it would be safe for pedestrians and so forth. This would be a straightforward contract. That's why I think while the materials cost may be a little bit higher in terms of the concrete, the labor may be a lot less. So that's why I'm talking about the same order of magnitude of dollars.
So none of the town employees would be working on the project?
No.
But you would be overseeing the project?
Yes.
And our town employees, though, would then be responsible for maintaining that area?
Well, the town would be responsible, sure.
When he had this thought about concrete, we had talked to a couple of the towns, and I can't remember which town, but they had put into their budget the equipment to maintain it.
Right. Yeah, they
Which
went
was
out.
snow removal equipment.
They can't maintain all of the sidewalks in
All
the
of them.
community.
Yeah. As
Yeah.
part of the
And
part
they
of the
got
budget.
it
Just to more
snow-
efficiently maintain
Right.
all of the sidewalks.
And clearing sidewalks is not like clearing the streets. People don't have to be going to work to make sure they don't need the sidewalks. But if they can be done within a reasonable time, after the storm, before ice cakes and everything else.
24 hours.
Could the equipment be included in the grant?
Well, that's what we're trying to do, but we'll see.
Good idea.
Yeah, try your.
My concern is that since, the state has been in a fiscal crisis for some time, and since we discussed this in January, I think it's gotten worse. And although I can appreciate the fact that we're saying, well, if we don't use the money, somebody else will, but the reality is that's not a reason to me to use the money, and I have concerns about adding a project of this magnitude to the town overall for ongoing maintenance. And, not that I'm not against the concept of a trail, and I benefited living in Hampton from the Farmington Canal. I think it was beautiful, but I just think right now to do a project of this magnitude, it just doesn't make fiscal sense for the town. That's my opinion.
Well,
that's what you have to discuss.
it's mostly federal highway money.
Yeah.
Run through the state.
The earmark is federal,
Yeah.
and really would have.
But there's still the ongoing maintenance piece, which can affect us.
To the deepest state.
Deepest state, yeah.
Well,
A small portion of it.
I agree with Cindy. Nobody wants to spend money in these times and everything, but it seems just through this discussion this morning that there's plenty of information to be had. I know the activist group that are opposed to it have come out this morning, but there are other sides to this discussion. And just with our discussion this morning, it seems like there's enough information to be gleaned from further discussion. And then do you want a motion to set this public hearing date? Or I'll move the public hearing date for this portion
It's
for
public information.
It's not a hearing.
public information meeting for September 19th.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
Will there be any more information than you now have, I guess is,
No. Other just
so it's really a
we're going to
public
present
discussion.
an alternate alignment of the path to show that we've taken into account the concerns people had of removal of vegetation that was they use as screen from homeowners. Basically, pull everything out to the edge of the road. We can't put it right on the road because DOT won't. But if we leave a 2-foot strip in there, they will accept that. So we will pull everything out. So the alignment would be different. And in that sense, it's not any different from the other sidewalk we put in town. So, but people sometimes like to visually see that. And I think what we're trying to do is say, listen, these are the comments we had, and I've listed them down. Biggest one was it encroached on people. It was back further. It required removal of vegetation. It was too wide. It was of a different surface that they were comfortable with. Try to address those issues. So, I mean, and then this, by going to a public information meeting, we want to show that we were responsive to some of the concerns. Not obviously all the concerns, but to some of the concerns. And then let us go forward, either go or no go. I mean, I have no vested interest in this, other than trying to be responsive to a segment of our population. So, and I don't need the work. I got plenty of work to do.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Reason I'm seconding is we heard from one group. There's another group out there not associated with any official group. I want to give them the right to express their
Well, that
opinion.
put to Gary's question. I mean, we don't know if there's any information. That's what public information meetings
Excuse me,
are all
sir.
about.
Good.
Well, it was just to Gary's point about, we don't know what other information is out there. I mean, the activists are out, we know that.
Is there any other discussion? Call for vote. All those in favor of
Aye.
the motion? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye, or no. I don't think there's enough new information to.
Okay. Motion fails. Okay, we have to set a, second thing is for the other trail. Do I have a motion to set the 26th at 7:30 PM?
So moved.
You wanted that,
I
okay?
wanted that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that trail? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. One less meeting we have to go to. Okay. Trace, do you have that one? Okay.
I would just, as one last thing, I would just say that if there's no path forward on this, then I would advise the DOT that we're not going to go forward, because that's, in essence, unless the Board of Selectmen give me some other direction, they're going to ask
Okay.
us if we can produce, because I had told them, if we have this meeting, I can produce contract plans to go out to bid at the end of November, early December. If I don't have this meeting and we can't resolve it within the community, then I would just as well advise them that they could take that money and use them someplace else, because that basically will kill the project.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, we had the same objection that some of us had the last time, which is that there does not appear to be a valid way from the green westward.
I thought.
That's been presented.
All right, let's move along. We have an arbitration session coming at 10 o'clock. I got to move this meeting
Thank you.
along. Okay,
You,
thank
you're all aware of that then.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, item 7.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
7.1, discuss and take possible action on an application for variance from the noise control ordinance as submitted by the Friends of Hammonasset for its Hammonasset Festival, taking place September 30th through October 1st at the Guilford Fairgrounds. Yes, ma'am. Could you, hi, state your name, please?
Barbara Hanson.
Hi, Barbara. How you
I
doing?
represent Friends of Hammonasset and the festival committee.
And
And-
Andrea Bradford.
Hi, Andrew. How you doing? Good morning. Sorry I had to wait so long, but
Okay, this is our 7th Hammonasset Festival. It's the second one at the Guilford Fairgrounds. The reason we moved from the state park to the fairgrounds is because of a construction project at the park, which is still ongoing. And we liked the fairgrounds last year.
Yeah,
So,
terrific.
basically, the event is the same as last year, except that Saturday is extended till 7 p.m. instead of 5. The festival celebrates the environment and honors Native American heritage. The sound system is simple, I think, and small. And according to the owner of the sound system, the music didn't extend much beyond the performance area last year. We are planning to have an acoustic session probably around 5 o'clock till 7 maybe. But I think
All right, we do have an approval from the police chief, so it just remains for us to approve the application.
I'll move to approve the application.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
There were no complaints registered in the selectman's office, I presume,
No.
none in the police department? 'Cause
Nope.
it was signed.
And there hasn't been in the past
Okay, great.
for this festival. I'll call a question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good time. Okay, request for the use of town property. We have 8-1 to 8-3 because of the additions.
I would move that we approve the 3 uses for town property as listed in the agenda,
Second.
as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Committee correspondence, we had a bunch of them, which we all discussed earlier. I don't have any other ones. Committee reports, any? Old business? Nothing. New business? None. Okay. Public forum, limited to 3 minutes, or any item? Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, I don't need to, I heard.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, we can't invite you.
Do you want me to just linger in case you need me?
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, we'll have 2 items for executive session.
I would move we go into.
Wait, let me read it.
we got the form. I'm sorry.
Discuss and take possible action on a contract between the town of Guilford and the Guilford Supervisors Association for the period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. And an executive session will be required. And then we have another item. And for that item, I'm going to invite the Finance Director and the Human Resources Director. Okay, item 15, discuss and take possible action on the acquisition/sale of certain real property. Executive session will be required. I'm going to invite the town attorney to that session. Okay, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Mike, we'll be coming back for a vote, okay? Okay, yeah, we're up here, okay. That's what I said, okay, we'll find out. Okay, need a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have,
Move that we approve the contract between the town of Guilford and the Guilford Supervisors Association and as
for
drafted.
July 1st,
Yeah,
2017,
correct, to June 30th, 2020, as drafted.
okay?
Second.
And allow the first selectman
To sign, that's what I thought, yeah, okay.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Need a motion to,
Table, do we table this?
yes,
I move that we table the acquisition sale of certain real property as discussed in executive session.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no further business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
What's the date of the next meeting?